So, how did you initially get involved with this project?
I was asked, is this on? Can you hear me? I was asked if I wanted to play the Reverend Mother, and I said, sure. I sort of always wanted to, you know, when they did Agnes of God here in the city as a play, I auditioned. It looked kind of likely for a minute, and then another girl got the part. And then they were going to make a movie out of it, and I auditioned, and it looked kind of likely. And then another girl got the part. And Joan of Arc, I never got to do her. I always wanted to. There was a nun in me. And this was a chance to do it.
So once you knew you had the role, how did you prepare for it? I mean, did you do a lot of research into that era, or?
I didn't have much time. And, you know, research can be a dangerous thing because then you start to believe it. And I'm an actor, and I pretend things. So I used the script that was presented to me. I did talk to 2 ex-nuns that had left, not because of Vatican II, but around that time, because of change in their own makeup, both of them told me. I wonder what they would think seeing the movie. So, yeah, I talked to them, and there you have it. I feel it's really important right off to say this is not a document about Vatican II or the Catholic Church or nuns. It's a bunch of nuns in Maggie's film, and you get to go inside that incredible location for a little while and spend some time with them and see things, you know, that are just left to the imagination, really, in a way.
So what was it like on the set? I mean, the film is so controlled and intense and quiet. I mean, did you kind of have to maintain that mood in between, or not necessarily?
There's 2 ways to answer it. On the one hand, we had all the extras that were there that were amazing and fed the girls and fed me, the older women that filled those pews, that sat there in the too much smoke day after day, the girls that you don't even really see but their elbows in the chapter of Faults film. The speaking roles are really the ones you see. There were several other women extras, local Tennessee women, on their knees in that day. We shot that several days. They were on their knees in there. I made sure they got knee pads. So there was this camaraderie, maybe like when the boys get to make a soldier film, even with the extras and so on. But it was somber, and they were taking it very seriously. Except the speaking part girls, they were having a lot of fun until it came time to do their scenes, and then they would deliver, especially with Margaret Qualley as their leader. She was quite serious about it. It was a delight to work with them. They were really amazing. And those women down in Tennessee, I wish I could thank every single one of them personally.
And Maggie, the writer-director, this is a very personal film for her, I know. What was her style like on the set? I mean, how did she approach directing you and the rest of the actors?
I don't know. I don't know quite how to answer that. I know that there were different relationships that got developed with others, and with myself, I found it quite difficult to understand what it was she was asking of me. And I think in the end, the only reason I'm mentioning it here publicly is in the end, it's actually what makes the performance happen in the end. I am seeking, and she is building her film around that. And it's not a film about Reverend Mother before these papers land on her desk. It's a film about a young woman coming in, and this is what's happening to the Reverend Mother at that particular convent at that time. And you know, the contemplative woman I held inside myself as I played her became this disturbed, confused, chaotic woman that doesn't know what to do because her world is coming apart.
And your character is so separate from the rest of the novitiates. Did you maintain a distance from the rest of the cast?
Not on purpose. I'm older than they are. We have different habits. I go to bed as soon as the sun disappears. I think they stay up a little later. So no, there was a camaraderie, but there was a distance as well. Most of them stayed in a local, you know, one of those places where they put us when we work, and they clean it with a lot of really toxic chemicals is one of the things I find with these places nowadays. It's nice we have a roof over our heads. We're always grateful for that, aren't we? But I chose to take a dorm room at this school we were shooting at that we called our convent. Every location that Reverend Mother is in, the wonderful work Juliana does off campus, was shot other places. But the bulk of the film, the convent, is all a single location in Tennessee. And they had rooms there, and so I took a dorm room and lived with Reverend Mother there.
Was it the kind of role you could kind of leave at the office, or was it kind of all-encompassing when you were in production to maintain this character?
I know it makes a person sound a little crazy, but it doesn't make a lot of sense when you're working to go too far from the work. You have to come back the next day and do it. I've never found an advantage in putting it down. I then get to the end of the shooting, and there is this bittersweet walking away from it. So eventually you do leave her behind and keep the kind of golden jewels she's taught you.
How did you feel about the costume? I mean, it's kind of restrictive in a way. You're only really seeing your face. Was that a hindrance to you in any way, or how did you kind of work with that?
I think that's one of the challenges that is really kind of delightful and awesome about it. And how do you do that? And probably one of the faults I would fault myself on as an actor is I can be a little big sometimes. And you can't really do that, or else you really better try really hard not to if you've been living this contemplative life for 40 years and you're quite at peace and you've learned to have a quiet countenance, because boy, you're gonna see it. So yeah, I love for a costume to inform me. Clothing always do, even our habitual things we put on. Wear something else one day and see what happens. Go outside, because that'll make a difference. I let it do that to me. And so the wimples that you see Diana take hers off, you see how they're tied onto the women's heads. It felt like if I moved my face, it wouldn't move with me. And I happen to have, because when I pack something so I can wear something to go to the grocery store in when I go to work, but mostly I pack something for her. And I don't know why, but I threw this white cloth jersey that I had into the suitcase. And I found, and it was agreed that it would be fine if I wore this wimple that I created out of this jersey with the instructions that I had gotten from the nuns about the way. It would take 2 straight pins and pin one this way and pin one this way, thus tying the wimple at the top of their heads. The women ended up with divots in their scalps from it. I didn't get divots.
There's so many great scenes in the film. I wanted to ask about a couple of them in particular. The scene with Denis OHare as the Archbishop coming in. Had you worked with him before, or what was the experience like?
I think I might have been in more films with Denis OHare than any other actor. The first one was Stephanie Daly, and I passed him as he was the priest on the stairs, and I was the mother of, I didn't know it, pregnant girl. And I passed him on the stairs. That was our first scene together. Mm-hmm. This is the first time I think Denis and I have worked in something where we've got to work together. Yes. And that then led, he mentioned it as we shot, but Denis and I were brother and sister in a film that Denis wrote that will hopefully be coming out soon. They're working on the editing now, called The Parting Glass, and Denis wrote it, and we shot it up in Toronto this year. So yeah, I love Denis OHare to pieces, and I really loved working with him. He is a very, very different actor than I. He has a completely sort of, I would call it haphazard style. I don't think he would disagree. He likes it that way. He likes to sort of throw it up against the wall. Not that he's not doing something without a great deal of depth and thought at the same time. I like to make my scenes match, my continuity match as I shoot. I'm very worried about where the water bottle is and if it remains there or not. And if I can cheat, well, I could cheat, but I can only cheat that much. I'm not cheating more than that. Denis is the opposite. So that was great to love someone so much and have something of conflict to be able to shoot this scene. Because when you shoot a fiery scene between somebody that you just adore and yourself, it's really fun. It's really fun.
And I also wanted to ask about the scene with Julianne Nicholson, because that's such a powerful...
And, oh my God, what an actor. Jeez.
Did you know her before this?
I think I've met her along the way here and there. I've always really admired her. And I was delighted that she was coming to play that mom. I think the role is, as roles go for women, somewhat mundane. We've seen it roll. But what Julianne does with it is just remarkable to me. And yeah, it was great fun to play with her. There was a little bit more fire and vinegar between us that didn't make it into the film. But when she's there in the office with me, at some of the shooting, I won't forget. Yeah.
And there have been a lot of great movie nuns over the years. There's a reference to Audrey Hepburn in this film, and Susan Sarandon and Whoopi Goldberg. I mean, did you think about any other movie nuns while you were playing this role? How to differentiate
I
yourself?
mostly styled it after Whoopi.
I figured. I sensed that. Did you think about that when you were approaching this role? Like how I make this nun different from other movie nuns we've seen before?
She was a lot like Whoopi, though, right? No. Film references are not my references at all. I don't go there with it. Discerning what Ms. Betts wanted from me, the costuming, the convent, the girls, the extras. That's what it all is to me.
Yeah. So you've been an actor pretty much your whole life. I mean, did you identify with this role in the way? Do you feel a calling to acting the way that your character felt a calling to the church?
I do think I'm doing the thing I was meant to be doing. I think Reverend Mother thinks she's doing the thing she was meant to be doing. I think that's similarity.
When did you first feel this calling to acting?
It's always really good to be in New York City. I live in New York State, but New York City is my place of birth. And I grew up in the East Village. And in about 1963-64, the amazing Peter Schumann began his bread and puppet theater in the building that is now the Public Theater. And my mom took me and my brother around the corner, and we built puppets with Peter and Elka and their kids. And then Peter asked if we wanted to help do the show. Sure, what's a show? And that meant me, not my brother, he wasn't interested, and a bunch of grown-ups practiced pretending. And they were so serious about it. And it was phenomenal. But then one night, me, 4, 5, 6, maybe 5, got to go out of the house at night and over to this wonderful magical building. And everybody was very excited. And then these people came. And actually, they didn't sit in chairs. They sat on the floor. And we began our pretend. And we did it from the beginning to the end without ever stopping. And the people believed it. I didn't know what it was called. It took a long time to get back to what that idea was. And by the time I was, I guess about 13 or 14 up in now southeastern Vermont, where my mom had taken me and my brother. And there was a little community theater there. And I began to take some children's theater classes, and they invited me and a friend of mine into the adult theater, and I haven't looked back.
And was your family supportive of this endeavor? I mean, as a way of making a living?
Yeah, my family is an odd family in that they never really worried about that part of it. And we never really had very much, and that was a great upbringing for an actor. I never expected much. I can live on pretty much nothing. And so, yeah, they supported me in every way, especially when they weren't supporting me, if you get what I mean.
And you studied acting at SUNY Purchase and also in London, I think. Do you still draw on things that you learned from those days on a
Oh
daily
yeah,
basis?
yeah, definitely. The study in London was sort of, I don't know that I draw from it so much as it was this really fantastic time for a 15, 16-year-old kid. Just really, and again, the seriousness with which this thing called acting was being taken at this tiny little shithole of a school in London. I just had a ball, and probably because of that, my dad was able to get me into college at SUNY Purchase, and I spent 2.5 years there and had, again, an amazing time. Not quite so much fun because it was getting more serious, and we had Joan Potter for a mentor, and boy, was she serious. Miss her so much. So glad she got to see some of the work at the beginning and know that I was actually going to have a career as an actor, as she had always thought. So.
And since this is for the SAG-AFTRA Foundation, do you remember what role got you your SAG card?
I gotta remember this because I was asked before. No, I don't. I'm so sorry.
Well, I know early on you were on All My Children for a while.
That would have been an AFTRA job.
That's true. That's true. What was
And
that?
I don't know if I needed a SAG card to do street walking,
Street walking, yeah.
but I would imagine that was probably the SAG card.
Yeah, yeah. So what was it like being on All My Children? I mean, you started to get some recognition at that point. How did that kind of affect your life and your career?
Well, it took a long, long time that any work I got, no matter how good I did with it, then got me other work, right? But when I did All My Children, I did that for a year. I had a brilliant manager that I happened to meet because I was also at the same time back at the Public Theater, although now it was the Public Theater, in a play with Chris Walken called Cinders. And I can remember finishing up on 67th Street and hailing a taxi cab, because now I could take a taxi cab, and zooming down the street downtown to the Public Theater to do the show at night. I get chills now telling you about it still. I knew it would never get any better, and it's gotten as good, but it's never gotten any better.
That's great. Yeah. Got to ask you about one of my favorite shows of all time, if not my favorite, Homicide: Life on the Street. How do you look back on that experience? I mean, you created a character that was really unlike anyone we'd seen on TV before in terms of a policewoman. How did you go about that?
Well, first of all, I was on a show that was doing things that nobody had ever done before on television. And they had to slow some of it down because the audience wasn't ready for the speed with which that little Aton camera would show you the murder scene. But it changed television. And it's even possible it changed the police force. Because when I played Kay Howard, there had never been a female homicide detective in the history of Baltimore. And across the United States, a handful of them ever, probably in smaller towns where it was really a sheriff and there was only one person, and so she became the homicide detective. It just wasn't a job that was given to women at all, and maybe Kay's being so good at it with 100% closure might have encouraged them with the idea. So much fun to do, so much fun, and Kay gave me so much strength in a time when I needed some strength, as a matter of fact.
Was there any pressure from the network to have you be more sort of a conventional TV actress kind of approach to the
Now
role?
I know you've studied up on this.
I have, yes.
Basically, in the end, I was fired because I sometimes wore a tie. I wouldn't dress in tight sweaters. I don't really have the shape for that kind of tight sweater thing anyway. And it was not the first time I encountered that kind of, that's kind of sexual harassment pressure, isn't it? No, I had lost the young writers because when I got that job, I was breastfeeding. And then when that was the pilot, and then when we shot the show, and I only realized years later that when this producer was walking across the lot and he said, "Melissa, what happened to your chest?" that was the foreshadowing I was about to be fired. So it's a complicated world out there.
Yeah.
Probably shouldn't have told you that story.
No. And another big step for you was Frozen River. I got an Oscar nomination for that. How did you feel about that?
Frozen River was a great movie. I mean, it was, 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 it
I mean, it was a very small film that made a very big impact. When you were making it, did you think this is a big step for me, or did you just think this is a great role and I want to do this?
I knew it was a great role, and Misty and I had actually shot with Courtney a short almost 5 years before she was able to gather the money together to make the feature film. It's hard for me to talk about Frozen River because we lost Misty Upham a couple of years ago. And when I was nominated for a lead actress Academy Award, there is no doubt in my mind that Misty Upham should have been nominated for supporting, because she was actually leading that film with me. And that bad turn in some kind of way led to that little Indian's death.
I'm sorry. Then you were nominated again for The Fighter, and that time you won.
Yes, I did.
Very deservedly so, I must say.
And that was thanks to Alice Ward herself.
Yeah. How did you approach that role? I mean, when you got it, how did you go about transforming yourself into that character?
Well, when they first told me that David wanted me for the role, I told them, well, tell David that's very nice, and we'll talk about another role another time, because I'm not 10 years older than either of those boys. And they want me to be the father of the mother of the two of them and 7 girls? One of the girls was older than me. So David believed that I could do it, and I decided to say, okay, all right, there's some really good actors that are a few years older than me that could, but I couldn't sort of talk my way out of it, literally. And so I went and I did it, and once I met Alice, which is why I express so much gratitude to her, she was who let me know I could play her. And with having the whole town of Lowell, all her children, her ex-lovers, most of the town, she was a remarkable woman. And they all called her Nana because she was kind of sort of everybody's Nana. And after I'd go through Johnny's hair and the makeup that Trish did and walk out in Mark Fridge's costumes, the whole town of Lowell would go, "Hey, Nana, how you doing?" So I thought, oh, okay, well, they're buying it. And I think Alice liked it because it did look kind of young.
And what was it like when they read your name at the Oscars and you went up and made your acceptance speech?
Well, you heard the mistake I made, no?
You dropped an F-bomb, yes, you did. Yeah.
No. And I've made quite a living on network television through the years, and I know what the rules are, and I was floored. Now, I probably could have held myself together if they got some schmuck up there to give me the award, but they gave me Kirk Douglas. So that was, the trophy boy that held the trophy while Kirk danced around, didn't open the envelope. The trophy boy is Omar Sharif's grandson.
Oh, wow. That's very cool.
You can see him if you put the clip back up.
And,
it's beautiful.
The awards just kept on coming. You won an Emmy for Louie. We were mentioning that episode a little bit backstage. That was quite a different role for you, I would think. More comedic, but also you had a very awkward sex scene, I guess, with Louie. How did you go about shooting that? I mean, what did you talk about before you kind of went for it?
First of all, Louie wrote it. He wrote all of it. Louie asked me if I would do it. I'm like, oh, okay, okay. I knew my son would like it. I knew my son liked Louis C.K.
Yep.
Okay, I'll try and do it. Okay, and then I got the script. So I asked a lot of male friends if they'd read it and tell me what they thought he was asking me to do. And, but then the best part of all was Louie, because he's directing it and he's starring in it and he's working with his camera operator and he's running over to me every 5 minutes like no actor I've ever worked with before. Melissa, can we run the lines? Can we run the lines? And we all know that's practice. that makes it better. And especially that awkward scene in the truck, by running it and running it and running it, it was just verbiage to us. It was just a scene we'd done 1,000 times by the time we shot it, instead of a scene we had never spoken to each other like it usually is when you're shooting television and you finally are opposite the person you're playing opposite, and they're shooting you, and you literally have never said the words to one another. And he and I had that practice. Practice is important.
And you're on television again now, and I'm Dying Up Here on Showtime. Your character's kind of loosely based on a real person. How did you approach it? Did you sort of study her at all, or?
The opposite, because loosely based is a loose term.
Yeah.
It's an homage to an amazing human being, and we'll get the cat right out of the bag, Mitzi Shore. Right. She's worth mentioning because Mitzi Shore, like the character I play, did something that nobody had ever done before. And that was to take this nightclub that her husband had sort of abandoned up on the Sunset Strip out in Los Angeles. Probably she did this in the early, mid-'60s, painted the place black, made a postage stamp of a stage, spotlight on it, and said, "Comics only." And now we have stand-up comedy. Yeah. And there's clubs all over the place. So I don't know if that's 100% accurate history, but that's the way I like it. And so I didn't know anything about any of that. I'd never heard of her. I had never been to a comedy club, God forgive me. It's a great night out. If you've never done it, you should just do it. Everybody that's there went there just to laugh. It's so cool. And then I bleached my hair blonde because her name was Goldie. She had a speech about a grandparent in Treblinka. I am such a shiksa. Thought, okay, she grows up in the Yiddish theater in New York. She goes out to California. Yeah, of course she bleaches her hair blonde. So that was my Goldie, and I was sticking to it. When I got out to shoot the pilot, I heard about a book. I said, should I read that book? They said, no, don't read the book. So I didn't read the book. And then we went to series. And I said, should I read the book? No, don't read the book. And after 2 or 3, I thought, maybe I should read the book. And I did. And our show very loosely follows history. We have a wonderful Richard Pryor who joins us for an episode. We have a beautiful Johnny Carson. And then everybody else, for the most part, we have some old boy comics on it. There were young boys back in the day. And we have some comics playing actors or acting. And we have some actors doing stand-up comedy. And it's really amazing and fun. And we'll do another season this year.
And since we're in the Robin Williams Theater, I wanted to ask you, too, about working with Robin at the risk of getting you choked up again. I'm sorry about that. You were in one of his last films, The Angriest Man in Brooklyn. What was the experience?
Last 2 films. I didn't make it in. He did. At the same time we shot Angriest Man in Brooklyn, we also shot The Butler. And I was his
right.
Mamie.
Yeah, that's right.
You see my elbow, I think, in the movie. That's okay. I was his Mamie. And so when we went back and we shot that beautiful scene in Angriest Man in Brooklyn, when we're dancing so happily and we get the very sad news that makes him the angriest man in Brooklyn, he was joking to me about when we, the couple we were playing, got dressed up as the Eisenhowers. Robin and I had also done an episode of Homicide together.
That's right. That's a very good episode. Yeah, I remember that. And also this year you played the famous atheist, Madalyn Murray OHair, in Most Hated Woman in America. I mean, are you just trying to play the most diverse characters possible? I mean, a nun and an atheist in the same year? Is
No,
this a coincidence?
but I did. They came out very separately. But I did shoot them back to back.
Yeah.
And the irony was not lost on me, and I feel like it's a very good way to describe Melissa Leo as an actor, that actor who played the Reverend Mother during the Vatican II and played Madalyn Murray OHair, who, if you don't know, single-handedly, in the early 60s, by taking it to the Supreme Court, removed Catholic prayer from public school. along with the Pledge of Allegiance, which used to say, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And this government, at some point, changed that to under God. Who's God? And that's what Madalyn was asking. If you haven't seen America's Most Hated Woman, it's on Netflix. It is well worth watching.
Absolutely. We're almost out of time. I just want to get to a couple questions from the audience. First question is, did you look at religious art in preparing for the role and the film?
No, but I've enjoyed stained glass all my life.
Next question, did your personal beliefs affect your performance in this role, your religious beliefs?
Oh, I thought you said my personal beliefs. I would have a different answer, because I did believe I was the Reverend Mother. Personal beliefs, no. Who I am, what I think comes little along with the role. The shape of me, something innate in me, not the things you could name in you. Those are the things that come along when I work, I think.
Question from Carrie McGann. Did you find any struggle or challenges with approaching this role as you made it seem so simply done?
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, not simple at all. Really, really fucking hard.
What was the biggest challenge about playing her? I mean, was it?
Trying to understand what the filmmaker wanted me to do.
Yeah.
It's literally sometimes what you're seeing happen on the screen. To me, that is fascinating. How do you get it to where it's gonna? I don't know.
Well, I think
I
you
don't know. I
succeeded.
just do it, and then she picks the takes she wants to do. There's in the can somewhere. There's a gentler Reverend Mother.
Really?
Yeah,
All right. Well, we'll look forward
she's
to that.
in the can somewhere with Albert.
Well, I think you did an amazing job, and thank you so much for joining us, Melissa Leo.